So welcome to episode 10 of the philosophy of ideation, where perception is survival. We often think that the key to change is action. But before we can think differently, we have to see differently. We have to perceive differently. So today's episode explores why perception, not knowledge, is the key to real survival, and why learning to slow down might just be the most beneficial thing that you can do in this world to move faster in thought. There's an old Arabic expression that states, "The one who breathes less lives longer." But it's not talking about fewer breaths, it's talking about deeper ones. Because long conscious breathing nourishes the brain cells, it lowers stress and it reactivates awareness. But most of us breathe shallowly through life, rushing through from thought to thought, reaction to reaction. And when the breath is fast, so too is the mind. And when the mind is fast, it skips details, it skips the nuances where insights truly lie. So slowing down isn't about delaying action, but rather it's a recalibration of attention. It opens the doors to perception. And in the world driven by AI, speed, transformation, slowness becomes a survival skill. Because when you rush in, you repeat. But when you slow down, you notice. And noticing is the first step to transformation. But let's relate that back to an extinction event. You see, the saber-toothed tiger was fierce. It was a dominant and powerful force within its time. I mean, these were no ordinary predators. They were killing machines, and evolution had shaped them to be just that way. You see, saber-toothed tigers would stalk their prey in dense grass and brush, where their form was hidden from sight, and their movements, they were minimal. But when they struck, the impact was so severe on the bodies of their prey that their bodies literally exploded from that impact, as if being hit broadside by a tank. You see, their strength was unmatched. Nothing could stand up to them. They were perfectly adapted for the world that they were living in. They had lived for over 30 million years, but that world was changing quickly. And when climate shifted, when their prey changed, they got smaller, their behavior adapted. And when things began to open up with climate change, everything changed. But they kept stalking the same way they'd always had done. And that's what doomed them. Now I want you to swap out the saber-toothed tiger for humans. What happens when we keep using the same outdated assumptions to interpret the new world around us? Unlike the saber-toothed tiger, we will not go extinct in the body. But as an individual on the marketplace today, our creative relevance, our adaptability, and our inner edge begins to die off. Because survival, it isn't about brute force, it's about fit. And that fit comes from perception. Because here's a deeper truth that I really want you to think about. We're not perceiving reality, we're perceiving models of reality, constructed from experiences, from culture, from memories, from trauma, and beliefs that we've developed throughout the course of our lives. And these models, they shape what we notice, what we ignore, and what we believe is possible. And if those models aren't routinely updated, they become blindfolds, filters that block signals from what we can perceive, and they make blind to us what we most need to evolve. And this is why the first phase of neurocreative programming is called perceive, because until we question the invisible agreements that we've made within our reality, we keep looping the same behaviors no matter how bold our goals sound. Agreements like, that's just not how things work, I'm not that kind of a thinker, or the idea that wouldn't work for me. Because these aren't facts, they're inherited thoughts and forms. And when we learn to recognize and challenge them, we begin to see differently. And once you begin to see differently, then you can think and you can create in entirely new ways. There's a man by the name of Ingalls Swan who passed away, I think, back in 2013, but he was best known as the father for remote viewing, which wasn't a mystical chasing of fantasies that you may think by hearing that word remote viewing. He had been hired by a number of different agencies, including the CIA, and had worked there for over 2 decades to perceive distant, unseen targets. And he had an amazing ability to do it, with his accuracy being astounding. As a matter of fact, you can Google his name today and you will find all the different reports on him that were posted based on the Freedom of Information Act right online today under the name Ingalls Swan. And here's the thing, even as accurate as he was, he never claimed to be superhuman, but rather human. He simply trained his awareness to notice differently. He had once said, you can't develop telepathy, which is the ability to communicate through thoughts, ideas, by means other than known senses, meaning our 5 basic senses. But you can develop the conditions where you can learn to perceive thoughts and ideas from what is available to you outside of your known senses. And this is when even mental telepathy becomes possible. And that insight, it's not about magic, it's about perception. You see, Swan, he emphasized that psychic phenomena are not about supernatural gifts, but they're natural outcomes of attuned awareness. And they emerge when we shift our intellectual frameworks, when we stop scanning for fireworks and start recognizing the subtle cues that are present in every environment and within our body itself. And he called this psychic literacy, or rather the ability to be able to pick up these perceptions, psychic literacy. But what he really meant by perceptual precision? Swan trained people to tap into intuitive feedback loops, real, biological, electromagnetic signals that flow beneath the surface of thought. And these are the things that we all experience. I mean, we've all had the gut tightening before bad news comes in, or the unthinkable sense of something's just not right, something's off. And knowing that without proof, that choice is both right and wrong, at least at that moment. But most people miss out on these subtle cues, not because they're not capable, but because they're moving too fast to feel them. And Swan, he didn't teach people to become psychics, but rather he taught them to become present, and to keep a sensory journal, and to practice daily introspection, and to train attention like a muscle until whispers become silent. And then, what once would have felt like a vague feeling in the gut becomes a source of intelligence and knowledge. Not because it's mystical, but because your attention has been reframed to perceive what's real. So instead of you asking yourself, how do I become more intuitive? Start asking yourself, what's already speaking to me that I've been moving too fast to hear? And this is where perception becomes insight. And insight becomes the most reliable edge in creativity and in strategy and in life. Because in this world of overwhelming inputs, the person who notices first leads the game. So, how do we start seeing differently? Well, you start small first. You start now. You slow your breath, you question your default stories and your mental frameworks, and you notice what you would normally usually ignore. And this is the practice of perceptual recalibration. And it's not about a mystical download or an overnight clarity, but it's about training your awareness to see what's already present, but filtered out only by your present habits. Now, that's what phase 1 of neurocreative programming teaches you. It teaches you how to make perception conscious, how to stop running yesterday's models, and how to align your inner lens with what's actually happening around you, not what used to be true. Because before you can act differently, before you can innovate or pivot or evolve, you have to perceive first. And if you've been feeling of late like the world is outpacing you, like your ideas are lagging behind your potential, maybe it's not a motivational problem. Maybe it's a perceptual problem. In perception, it's trainable. And in the next episode, I'm going to explore how to take what you perceive and organize it into patterns that guide intuitive action and creative breakthroughs. But until then, keep noticing. And my name is Ty Glover, and I bring clarity to the obvious. Cheers.